So my name is Michael Cain, and welcome to River Talk. Today on the panel we have
Aaron,
Mac, Heather, and Kylie.
and we're going to discuss some current events that are important to all of us in today's society. Would anyone like to start?
I'll just throw a general topic out there and say we should probably discuss what our issues are personally with people. See there's a lot of issues specifically in American society because globally we're being watched constantly, almost as a sitcom really, and I think we really should get down to the bottom of why that happens and what our problems are, because there's a lot of opposing views here right now, and I think people are constantly clashing. We should maybe figure out why that's happening.
Well, do you think that because we're in such a media-based culture or society that it's a little bit sensationalized to some degree?
Absolutely.
Yes, yes, because people will say anything behind a computer screen or a phone screen on the social media. People aren't afraid to say anything on the internet, but there wouldn't be half as much confrontation face to face. So I think that the drama and the hostility is heightened dramatically by social media and any sort of media in general.
It doesn't help that social media only likes to focus on people like the Kardashians versus actual world problems either.
Mm-hmm. They always focus on the negatives. It's like they thrive off it, you know, the drama.
That's been a trend in all media news for some time now, but that is something as human beings we really should probably address. But even I find myself skimming over if it's a slow news day. Like if there wasn't a tragedy or a sensational thing or something that was exaggerated, at this point I almost don't even notice it.
Well, that's the point, is that they only exaggerate the negative. If it's positive, then they make it worth skimming over. They're just like, oh yeah, hey, we had a good day for voting turnout.
Sure.
But
Kitten
cool.
saved from tree.
Yeah, there was a kitten saved from a tree. They don't make it dramatic or exciting. They make it so that it's easy for us to skim over, whereas they very elegantly exploit every negative thing to happen.
Do you think this is a style of media that needs to be addressed, or do you feel that our attention spans as human beings and as Americans have been somehow modified or conditioned?
I mean, I feel like they've been modified entirely. We revolve around our phones and social media, and I hate to admit it, but I'm on my phone way more than I would like to be. And I think that goes into play with a huge problem America has today, like with moral values. I feel like as of lately, this generation, our moral values are just
They're kind of out of whack. The priorities are completely switched top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with this like hyper influence of news in today's society, the people that we would have looked to for moral character or moral guidance, more and more is being found out to have them be lacking as well. And so we've kind of lost good role models, and so we're left with either outlandish ones or none at all.
I feel like the role models are so heavily exposed in every aspect of their life that when you thought somebody didn't have a flaw, the media will find a flaw. Not even the media, but peers via social media. If somebody doesn't like you, whether you're famous or you're just a small town part of the population, somebody who doesn't like you is going to find a flaw in you, and they're going to make sure that everybody knows it. So you wonder like what to believe in anymore or who to look up to, because you never hear anything positive.
That's another thing that's gotten all sorts of mixed up though, is how we view our heroes and our role models and stuff. No one is perfect, absolutely no human being, and yet we have this fantasy that our favorite supermodels or our favorite leaders, our parents, anyone you are close to should be perfect, absolutely perfect. And as soon as you find the one thing wrong and the media exploits it, well then all chaos breaks loose. We need to get rid of that fantasy. It's not reality.
I was kind of interested on the kind of human reaction we're getting from all these earthquakes that are happening around. It's like all these tragic things are, I mean, like all this media and terrorism and elections and all of this stuff is on the news day in and day out, and then we'll have an event, like an amazing event that affects multiple places in the world where hundreds of people die, and it seems to come in and out of the media very quickly. But I have noticed that in the areas that are struck by this tragedy, that you see this like amazing ability of human beings to come together and actually survive and help one another, which normally our society doesn't really seem to support too much. I was kind of impressed by that.
Yeah, we're so desensitized, you know, to all the violence and the chaos and all the bad things that happen. When something like that happens, we're like, yeah, what's new? People think the world's gonna end 4 years ago, and so people, I mean, when something like that happens, it's like, wow, pray for Paris, pray for Japan, there's an earthquake, pray for so-and-so, but people say, send prayers this way, but do they even really pray about it? You know what I mean? If they just,
It's one thing to say, it's another thing to actually take action to try.
What
to
I
change
don't like is when people say, sending good vibes. You gonna send a prayer, or are you just sending vibes? How do you send vibes?
Well, I think that's
How do
just
you-
a way for
concentrate.
people that are non-denominational, this,
How do you
Send
send a
a
good
good
vibe?
it's how, it's very similar,
Yeah.
in my opinion, it would be just a metaphor for how you would send a prayer, I would send a vibe, because
Right.
we subscribe to two
Yeah.
different
But-
schools of philosophy.
Why would you just think about them? Why wouldn't you take action? I feel like prayer is more of an action than just thinking about it. Like, oh, well, that sucks for them.
I
Well,
think that that's a
what-
black hole that can be debated for many hours
Yeah.
based on, and then it's gonna basically come down to faith, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no science there that we can argue with.
For someone who doesn't have faith, it's a way of them to still feel like they can try and do something to help them, even if it isn't through a spiritual act.
I think the key word is positive. Like, I think that the world, through science, you can determine that there is positive and negative energy, and I think the idea behind it is they are attempting to send out positive energy.
good thought.
Yeah. A debate for another day.
We could do a whole episode on that, and I think that both sides are very right when it comes down to it. There's really just no way to get to the bottom of that situation.
I was like, the biggest event I was like thinking of being kind of really important, hasn't been really talked that much in the debate, unless from the Democrat side anyway, being climate change. Climate change is a big thing that affects actually everybody in the whole world. Some people believe it's a hoax, some people believe it's real. Like, I'm one of those people that, yeah, it's a real deal. Like you have all these companies that are polluting, polluting waters, like ADM. You have you have gasoline that's polluting the air, which that's what we use daily life. We use our cars every day. Or if you do, like, ride a bike, or if you don't have a car, you ride a bike or something like that.
I think you make some very good points, and I think that there are a number of people that would like to see change, but once again, they're willing to think about there being change, but if it really meant them using less electricity, having to not drive and walk or someplace and live that, we're not seeing a lot of the action that it's going to take to see any real change there.
Now, my question to you is that is like all the like solar panels and all that. How much does that cost? Like that, is that one big thing of why like people are not on the go climate change, like because of like the
Any
cost
sort of
of
reform has a cost, unfortunately. I
Yes.
think this is a really appropriate topic considering it's Earth Day. And contrary to a traditional conservative view, I do believe in climate change. It's real, it's science. You really can't deny science. But honestly, if humans weren't populating the Earth, there would still be climate change.
Exactly.
And the problem is that people don't understand that Earth, when it became a planet, went through 3 different atmospheres before we got to the atmosphere we currently inhabit today. And there was so much global warming in their second atmosphere that everything we would have burned to death. So climate change has been around since the beginning of time, and yes, I think it would be silly to deny that, but we also have to realize it's to a much less extent than it was. There are things we can do to prevent it, not prevent it, but things we can do to maybe lessen it a little bit. And
With
those
our
are all
waste.
conscious individual choices.
Exactly. And I mean, you have to factor in the El Nino, and all that stuff with the periodically different years and the temperatures. And I don't know.
Well, I think that the point you make is very strong. I think that this is a natural cycle of Earth, and it's going to happen over thousands of years. But it's important to look at the fact that it seems to be moving at an accelerated pace, and rather than argue, if it's happened before and if it's going to happen again, it seems like these are pretty constant facts. What we really have to concern ourselves with is what's going to happen in our lifetime, or maybe not even our lifetime, but our children's lifetime, because we are seeming to be reaching one of the peaks in between the cycles. And so where it might not affect like 1,000 years from now or 500 years from now, it might not have as dramatic as effect because it will have peaked and already started to come
Why
back
are the
down.
glaciers, increasing in size if there's global warming?
As far as my research tells me, there's only one glacier in our hemisphere that's getting larger versus all the rest of them are getting smaller. Like the glacier over Mount Shasta was up until just recently growing still at a readily pace. And that's an abnormal place if you've ever been there. It's very magical, but things are definitely very different in that part of the world. But even Dr. Barleen is from that area in the world, and he visited last summer, and he said that he'd never seen the snow. You know, it's like I would go visit friends and family there, and it would be 75 degrees down where they lived, and we could drive up the mountain and play in the snow
Yep.
in the middle of summer. And I guess this last summer it wasn't like that.
Right.
It also has to do with time and science. The hole in the ozone isn't what people think, where it's just one hole that's steadily getting bigger. It grows and it shrinks depending on the climate that it's at right now, which we're all agreeing that we're going through a climate change, and general season changes. Just like Iowa, we have 4 seasons. The poles have seasons as well.
What part of the earth is facing the sun?
Exactly.
Where are we in our ecliptic? It
Yeah.
all depends on, there's a lot of different factors that play into it, which is why it's really hard to debate, because it's constantly changing, the world is ever changing. And I think whether you think climate change is real or not, why don't we just stop arguing about it and take a chance to do something positive?
Mhm.
Why don't you just use a little bit less electricity and water? What's so bad about that?
How do you feel about the countries that are just now entering their industrial revolutions, where we kind of used dirty energy or dirty fuels ignorantly before the science was discovered to kind of make ourselves a worldwide leader, and now we're going to places like India and other countries that are trying to build coal power plants and trying to they're trying to mimic our seeing rise to industrial greatness, and we're telling them that they have to stop, they can't do that. And so it's like where the science supports that we should tell them not to do that, but we're not really providing them with an option to come into their own economies and industries and things like that.
Because we think since we're already essentially at the top of the chain, we have the authority to tell them, we've been there, done that, and this is what didn't work in the long run, so you guys shouldn't do it. But we don't really necessarily, I don't want to say we don't have the right, but
Okay, so that leads me into my next point of what I find wrong with our country, is our foreign policy. Everything has been, nothing has been working for us, and with the people who run it, it's not a good deal. And I don't know why we think we have the authority to go into countries and
Well, I think that what might be considered a political failure isn't necessarily considered an economic failure. So I think the reason we'll do things that we keep getting a negative response to is because we find ways to profit off of it. Maybe not our entire country, but individuals that have enough influence over our government to allow the practice to continue.
are you talking about offshore outsourcing?
Well, I'm just, to some degree. I'm just saying it's like why we've had such a negative response in the Middle East. Like it's always ended in war, yet we still end up back there for some reason. And you would think that they don't want us there, we're upset that we're there, but for some reason we keep going back there. And I think that if you were to follow the money, you would find that someone is profiting off of us doing this. Be it contractors or big oil, like there are a number of individuals that are going to continually to want to put us in troublesome social and political situations for economic gain.
Well, I mean, it has been in the past, when we go to war, we make quite a bit of money. And
It gets
the economy
countries
going.
on depressions.
I had someone today come up to me and say, we need another world war. No, we don't.
We don't, but
We
that's-
would not survive another world war.
Another nuclear.
And that's why I
Yeah.
brought, yeah, but we made so much money off of the last one. It's like, yeah, how many people died and how many people's families were devastated? We're gonna add nukes on top of that? I don't think so.
It is a business practice that has become somewhat acceptable in our current culture.
There's a lot of nuclear
Oh, well,
power around the world.
We could just say no nukes allowed. It's like, yeah, we also say no germ warfare. We also say no bombing citizens. All of that has happened in the past. There are no limits.
Well,
when it
there's
comes
always
to
going
war.
to be somebody who's willing to break any rule. That's
Sure.
just human nature.
Well, that's how we came up with the rules in the first place. Someone decided to go too far, so we made a rule.
And then someone continued to break it.
But yeah, I feel like we don't punish people enough, like with drugs and the drug war that Reagan stated. Like, and now Obama is releasing inmates for drug charges, and what does that do? I don't know what the statistic is for people going out of jail and turning back right in, but it probably, I know from last time I checked, it was higher than 50%.
Well, there's a higher chance
Drugs
of
should be
being
a
cooked up.
social or medicinal issue. There should be more mental health treatment. There should be more addiction treatment. These prisons that hold most of these people are prisons for profit. It's in the industrial prison complex's best interest for there to continue to be harsh penalties for drugs, because the federal government is literally paying private institutions to house these people.
I think
as soon as you make money out of putting someone in jail, it's no longer about social rehabilitation, it's about economic profit.
Actually, though, I don't feel like people who go to jail for drugs is just a way to get more money. I feel like people who deal drugs, sell drugs, and do drugs go to jail because they are making good choices. They are taking futures away from their people who buy drugs. And honestly, drugs, like being addicted to drugs is a choice, but for an enabler and that just doesn't sit well with me.
But how could you subscribe to a society that thinks it's okay to push pharmaceuticals, tobacco, and alcohol, which have been proven to be even more harmful than most narcotics, and then we can tax them and earn money off of that, where we're incarcerating other people for different
If it was
choices?
up to me, I would have forcer alcohol laws and to mix tobacco altogether, honestly. But that is not obviously viable in this situation in our life. But I'm just saying, people who like make money off meth and cocaine by ruining other people's lives and making people addicted, I feel like that is a huge problem. And like for Obama to just make it not a big deal and people saying we need to end this drug war.
First of all, almost every single person Obama is letting out of prison early are cannabis charges, which is legal in almost half our states now by personal vote of the people. And second of all, that once again, if we had better education in our schools and we had a better education and more social programs, people would be more aware of the dangers of these things and they wouldn't be so ill-equipped to make the bad choices in the first place.
But with what money will we have these education programs?
We'll take all the money we're spending on keeping people in jail for drugs and use it for education and for help instead of incarceration.
Interesting side note, most people become addicted to drugs while going into prison before they're actually going. A lot of people who are addicted to drugs come from prison.
Also, interesting fact, cannabis also is a huge gateway drug and it leads into...
So
They've
is alcohol.
disproved that.
Oh, who did? Who did?
Do some research.
Okay. But who did, if you know, since you did your research?
They have done multiple studies in Virginia, in San Francisco, and in parts of Washington that show that you're 10 times more likely to use prescription drugs or alcohol as a gateway drug than you are cannabis.
Okay, but aside from that, a really large problem with people who are doing drugs, whether cannabis is addicting or a gateway drug or not, all of those facts aside, we do have a social and economic problem with individuals who sit on welfare and food stamps and have multiple entitlements in which some states are starting to drug test now, which is a really great reform, but in other situations they're receiving money because all their pocketed money is being spent on tobacco, alcohol, and drugs. And that's all the underground economy.
I will totally see that there are all kinds of problems when it comes to how our economic transfer programs are doled out, and I think that it's very wrong that individuals can go on, say, any type of government assistance, and then rather than work to better themselves just to continue to make their situation worse so they need more economic assistance, like they shouldn't be allowed to have more children while on economic assistance and things like that. And I will agree that those programs do need some restructuring, but I think that wholeheartedly that the majority of drug testing in the workplace comes from insurance issues, because these huge giant insurance companies will offer you, 30 to 40% discount for your multi-million-dollar policies if you'll do right on drug testing. And I think that that's how we've become into this drug testing culture, which I feel is a huge invasion in our privacy. Wow. I feel that if you're performing some sort of task or something like that and something goes wrong and you are found to be inebriated in any form, you should totally be held responsible for it. But if there's just a trace of something that's in your system from 2 months ago, you shouldn't immediately be fired for it, because you weren't, what happened that day wasn't because of a decision that you had made previous to that.
You're right about that specific point, but it's illegal no matter what.
Yeah.
I got you, but I think that you will see more reform rather than less on both sides of that. I think that you will see the laws changing the opposite direction from what you're suggesting.
So you think we should do less drug testing?
I think that you'll see more specific types of drug testing. Like, I think that they have the ability to test if you are inebriated on the drug currently, not just if you had made a choice in your personal time to do something. Especially when we'll start to see, so far the FDA's approved studying on LSD, MDMA, cannabis, all for medical testing. And then as you start to see more medical applications for these narcotics, I think you'll start to see how the social acceptance will change, and how they are introduced into the workplace, the criminal system, and your personal life.
Usually when you sign on to a job though, you sign a contract saying it is okay to randomly drug test. Like you know you will be getting drug tested. It is like, if you do not want to get randomly drug tested, do not take the job then.
I gotcha, and I'm just saying we'll see a change in how those tests are administered.
Continuing on the drug line though, and thinking of jobs, here's some good news that we could possibly debate. They're considering changing all the tobacco companies, if smoking does get outlawed, to making them for antibiotics. There have been a lot of studies showing that tobacco plants are really good at taking on bacteria and spreading virus that they can use to change into antibiotics, and it's 5 times faster than using the eggs that they would normally use from chickens. What are our views on that?
I think that if you can find any good way to use tobacco positively, I haven't done research on that, but that sounds like a great idea, and it's a really good note to end on.
Yes.
I
Yay!
think we can all agree with that.
Yeah.
This has been River Talk. Thank you so much.